It was Christmas Eve, and the slug's bonnet was jam-packed with all manner of punters. Drinkers, thinkers, people tinkering on instruments, families cramped around tables, far-travelled relatives bursting through the door, welcomed by loud cheers from the folk who knew them. The place was crackling with festive cheer. Here, even the bar folk and the servers had fire-blushed smiles on their faces. And no wonder. It was time and a half for working Christmas Eve. And being Christmas Eve, the boss would turn a blind eye to all the boozy concoctions which they were disguising as mugs of lentil soup behind the bar. The atmosphere was positively toasty. Although not every piggy in the slug was wrapped in a blanket of tinsel. On the end of the bar, on his own, stood an oldish man halfway through his third pint of heavy beer. Next to his pint lay a newspaper opened at a crossword, which he pretended to tackle whenever another punter came near on their way to the toilet. He hadn't come to the slug looking for company, but neither did he wish to be alone. It's a strange thing, coming to a place full of people, when you have no intention of sharing a joke, or a hug, or a handshake. But perhaps it's difficult to hear your own thoughts when you're surrounded by a racket of other voices.
You having another one, Ronnie?
No thanks, Cara. I've had my 3. Any more and I'll be the bed. Best be up the road.
No worries, have you got somewhere to go tomorrow?
I'll just be in the house, I think. The one day of the year when the telly's any good, isn't it?
Alright, well, you're more than welcome to come round to ours if you're not too busy.
Thanks, pal. It's a very kind offer, but probably just have a quiet one.
Well, you know where we are if you change your mind.
Thanks, Pep. I appreciate that, I really do. Right, well, I hope Santa's good to you.
You too, Ronnie. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
The icy air was a shock to Ronnie as he stepped out of the slug and onto the street. The pub door wafted a final fold of warm air onto the back of his legs before it settled and stayed shut. Ronnie clutched his stick under his arm and quickly wrapped his scarf around his neck, trying not to slip on the sugary pavement. It was a crisp night, and the moon illuminated wisps of cloud behind the skyline, despite not showing its face just yet. A gentle amount of snow was falling. Not quite enough to lie, but falling nonetheless. You know those tiny flakes which seem to get confused or lost on their way to the ground? Some appearing to never actually touch the earth at all. Instead, they're whisked away sideways or upwards like tiny dancing fairies. It was that kind of snow. It was that kind of night. Once organised, Ronnie took a moment to admire the evening. And then he began to walk. The street was lifeless as he made his way along. He was now some way from the pub, but Ronnie could still hear a soft rabble coming from the slug whenever the door swung open. Apart from this, the only other sounds were of his own making. Even the river was slow and silent. Ronnie looked down at the water from the peak of the old pack-horse bridge. He knew the water depth below to be only 3 or 4 feet. But being so slow and still and quiet, Ronnie reckoned it could be as deep as the dark. Despite his own house being down to the left, once over the bridge, Ronnie took a right turn and headed down a bumpy road. The street lamps were too far away to have any effect on this part of the village. Ronnie was finding it tricky to see, and a couple of tree roots nearly got the better of him.
Oh!
But he managed to find his turn. He headed down a narrow path, lined with tall beech hedges, which hadn't quite lost their leaves yet. After feeling his way along the hedge in the dark, Ronnie eventually reached the graveyard gate. The moon was now shown face, and when compared with the shadowy path, the night now seemed quite bright. Long shadows of upright stones streaked across the graveyard. But only one stone in the graveyard held any significance to Ronnie. He pulled a small sprig of mistletoe from the inside of his jacket and placed it on the base of her headstone. The previous year, he placed the mistletoe on top of her headstone. But when Ronnie came back on Christmas Day, he noticed the wind had blown the mistletoe onto the neighbouring grave, which belonged to Margaret Innes. And Ronnie didn't care much for Margaret Innes. So he was taking no chances this year. A tear ran off the end of Ronnie's nose and onto the frosted grass as he struggled back to his feet. He read the dates on the headstone. He dwelled on how long ago it was, but how raw and ragged it still felt. How slowly the time had passed since, but how swiftly he'd grown old and thin and hollow. Curious things are time and living. Ronnie wiped his eyes with his scarf and looked up to the moon. The cold air stung his wet cheeks. A nippy reminder that he was still very much an earthbound soul, albeit a weary and weathered one. As he stood there and sunk into his tipsy inner thoughts, Ronnie was suddenly awakened by a strange noise coming from behind. Ronnie turned around to find a deer gnawing away at a gravestone. It was about 30 yards away, and it hadn't seemed to notice him. Ronnie took a few cautious steps towards the deer. He tried to be silent, but his feet crunched loudly on the stiff grass. Ronnie had seen deer in the graveyard before, but they normally bolted away at the first sniff of human presence. He continued forward. Ronnie was now less than 10 yards away from the thing. Even still, the deer took no notice. He took a few more paces, and he could now see that this was no ordinary red or roe deer, but a reindeer. Ronnie had never seen one in the flesh before, but there was no mistaking it. This was a reindeer. On closer inspection, Ronnie could see the thing was tearing lichens off of a gravestone and eating them. Ronnie stood in disbelief for a moment. Why hadn't the reindeer ran off, he wondered.
Excuse me. That's disrespectful towards the dead, you know.
Ronnie felt a bit silly for saying it. But then the deer stopped eating and lifted its head and looked towards Ronnie.
Oh, sorry, I didn't ken that. I thought folk wouldn't want things growing on their gravestones. I was thinking maybe it showed that the living people had forgotten about them, like. The lichens are fine as well.
Bloomin' hell. You can speak.
Huh? So can you.
I know that, but I'm a human. And reindeers and graveyards aren't supposed to speak.
All right, I see how you might think that's a bit weird.
Right, I think I've had one too many at this lug. Best be heading home.
Ronnie turned his back on the deer and headed for the graveyard gate as quickly as his old creaky legs would take him.
Oh, geez, oh. Right, Ronnie, then speak to animals. That's when you ken you've dropped your marbles.
Ronnie heard the air move above his head.
Oh!
Then, with the grace of a snowflake, the reindeer landed on the path in front of him.
It can fly and all. Leave me alone. I'm just an old man trying to make his way home.
Ronnie performed another U-turn and fled back towards the graveyard. But in his panic, he lost his footing and went down. Down like a sack of potatoes that forgot it had arms.
Oh, ow, oh, you, oh, Jesus, oh. What's going on? Oh, no.
Ronnie reluctantly lifted his face from the stiff grass. And much to his disappointment, the deer hadn't disappeared. Instead, it now stood inches away, silhouetted by the crisp moon.
You're echt. That was a fair fall you had there.
Oh.
Ronnie made an attempt to get back to his feet, but he lost grip of his stick, and he met the earth once again. The reindeer lowered its head.
You grab ahead of my antlers.
After some time, and against his own judgment, Ronnie grabbed on to the antlers. Following a few less than dignified manoeuvres, Ronnie was once again back on his feet. The reindeer lowered its head and picked up Ronnie's stick with its mouth and offered it back to Ronnie.
Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Ronnie brushed himself down, then shuffled to a nearby bench. The reindeer followed, and Ronnie took a seat.
Have I lost my mind? Or can you really speak?
Well, most reindeer canna speak, I'll give you that. But I'm sorta special, you ken.
Right.
Well, I used to be special.
You used to be special.
I was the first and only reindeer fae Braemar to fly with Santa Claus.
So you're telling me I'm talking to one of Santa's reindeer? I've lost my mind.
Oh, I wouldn't tell you a lie about such a thing. It was the greatest honour of my life, it was.
So, you don't fly with Santa anymore?
Nah, you see, about 80 years back.
Wait a minute. How old are you?
Well, I'll be 403 years old in April.
Bloody hell.
Aye, us special reindeer are a long time lived. Anyway, about 80 years ago, this very evening, me and the rest of the special reindeer were pulling Santa in his sleigh over Edinburgh. And all of a sudden, I couldn't fly anymore. I started falling down. We lost a bit of hecht and clipped the top of Edinburgh Castle. I almost dragged Santa and the other reindeer down with me. But luckily they saw fit happened and got us a bit of hecht again. Santa didn't say a word about it at the time. After a few minutes I was flying again and didn't think much about it. But the same sort of thing happened the next Christmas, and all of a sudden I couldn't fly again. So Santa thought it best that I retired from flying with the sleigh, in case that accident happened again. It broke his heart just as much as mine. But these things happen, I suppose.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You must miss flying with the other reindeer and that.
Aye, the best feeling in the world being up there with the herd. But this time of year is the hardest. It makes all those good memories come screaming back to you. But at least I've got all the memories, I suppose.
Aye, that's true. At least the memories are there.
I take it that gravestone over there means something to you.
Aye. She was something else. She was what I lived for. And when the dirt went on top, it seems most of me was buried with her.
Oh, sorry about that. She sounds like an awful fine quine.
Aye, she was. A flower in a sea of glass. That was a long time ago now, though. Always feels a bit closer at this time of year, mind you.
Aye, fairly does.
What's it like then? To fly?
Ach, it's the best feeling in the world. It's the very definition of freedom, I reckon. The world looks awful different from up there, and no place is off limits. Well, as long as you avoid the jets and airplanes and things like that.
Oh, I bet it is. Sounds magic up there. We were booked to go on an aeroplane to Spain once. Before, well, we'd never been on a plane before, or left the country. Still haven't.
I can show you if you like.
What do you mean?
Might not be as cosy as an airplane, but I can talk you to the sky.
Oh, I'm maybe a bit old for trying new things. And I thought you were having trouble flying anyway.
Aye, well, every now and then I drop it to the sky. But I can sort of feel it coming now, you know. And I feel a rechte now. I dinna bite. In fact, reindeer can't bite humans, as we've only got one set of upper teeth. Oh, come on, men. You'll love it up there.
Oh, nah, I best be getting home.
For fit? It's no like your wife's waiting for you.
Hey, don't say that.
Oh, sorry, I got a wee bit carried away there.
That's strike one, bad reindeer.
Oh, sorry. Come on. Let me show you to the sea of stars above. And I can drop you home after if you like.
Well, I suppose I don't exactly have big plans for the future.
Oh, exactly. Just a wee 10 minutes or something. You can see fit it's like. Come on, to the sky with me.
Right, okay then.
Oh, you dancer, man. I don't mean my friend dancer, I mean yes.
Listen, pal, you sure I'm not losing my marbles?
Oh, didn't I ken you had marbles? Well, we can keep an eye out for them when we're up there.
Oh, jeez, oh. Right. They just sit on you.
Aye, but just climb up in there first, though.
Ronnie stood on top of the bench. The reindeer pulled up beside him, and Ronnie carefully climbed onto its back.
Oh, what you doing, Ronnie? Sitting on top of a reindeer in a graveyard. Oh, what's going on?
Sorry, fit?
Nothing. Just talking to myself.
Grab a head of the fur on my neck, nae the antlers.
Right, okay.
We were gonna hae to take a run at it, and then a wee bit of lout to get up. I canna get into the air for a standstill with you on my back. You're half a heavy, man.
Well, you're not exactly the most athletic-looking reindeer I've seen. You need to slow down in the lichens.
Aye, that's the spirit. Recht, you ready?
Well, I'm in my seat now. May as well stay for the show.
Here we go.
Oh!
The long path of the graveyard was glistening in the moon and made for a pretty replica of an airstrip. Firstly, they began to circle as Ronnie came to grips with this new sensation. After circumnavigating the bench a couple of times, the reindeer pulled onto the main path and began to trot.
Are you sure about this?
Aye, recht. I'd tacht Ronnie. Yeah, I'd tacht Ronnie. We plucking the hairs out, me.
How do you know my name?
Well, I ken most folk on the good list, you ken, and Santa said you were on it.
Before Ronnie even had time to follow instructions, the reindeer broke into a gallop. Ronnie could hear every joint in his body scream as they rattled down the path. With each shudder, loose change and other bits flew out of his pockets. The trees which lined the path became blood as Ronnie's eyes watered with the rushing cold air. And then, like a switch, he could no longer hear the reindeer's hoofs on the earth. Ronnie and the reindeer were flying.
Oh my goodness!
I have a feel in your head when your feet no longer live on the cold, bare winter ground. And you hurl through the night over Christmas lights on a reindeer winged kid, feeling a spark, moon in the dark, sucking that cold air into your heart, feeling to fly up in the sky. Ronnie, I think they're snow in your eyes, snow in your eyes, snow in your eyes, snow in your eyes, snow in your eyes. Ronnie's alright, 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 Ronnie's alright. Margaret, quick! Come out of the window a minute. There's something up in the sky. It looks like old Ronnie. And he's riding a reindeer. The old spade alone. Oh, the cold has made her slow. And the careworn sleep in snow. And you're heading west towards me, where the islands and the sea are the things are only see. Feeling a spark, moon in the dark, sucking that cold air into your heart. And in the years which followed, Ronnie and the reindeer would meet in the same place, at the same time, on the same day. In the evenings leading up, Ronnie would collect a bag of the best lichens for his companion. And in exchange, the reindeer would take Ronnie for a flight, far and high in the cold Christmas sky. It's said that this arrangement continued for some years, until one Christmas, when the snow was particularly deep, the reindeer arrived to find the old man had gone. And in his place stood another gravestone. And in the decades which followed, all the stones in the graveyard continued to have the lichens stripped away by the reindeer. All except one stone, which stood lower than the rest, but covered in a forest of green and yellow lichens, left tangled and untouched, a mark of respect for an unexpected friend.